The ash here does not fall the way ash falls in other countries. It does not drift. It does not settle. It moves along the ground in long lines that do not stop when they meet stone. The ash remembers being something and is still trying to be that thing. I have been in the land of shadow for 3 days. The trees on this ridge have leaves that were once gold and are now the color of cooled iron. The animals do not come to drink at the small river below me. The river runs uphill in places, and I do not know why, and I do not think the river does either. He was buried under a tower I sat beside. I did not know that at first. Tonight, I would like to tell you about Messmer the Impaler. He had a mother, and his mother had had a village. The village had been small, in the north of this country, a place of silver-haired women who lived a long time and who could hear what trees were saying to each other. I would have liked them if I had come earlier. I had not. I had come during the part of the story where the village had already begun to be empty. The reason it was emptying was the ones with the curved horns, the ones their world would later name the Hornsent, though by the time the name was given, there were not many left to answer to it. They lived to the south, in towers, and they had horns that came out of the sides of their heads, like the moons their country no longer had. And they had discovered something about the bodies of the silver-haired women that they should not have discovered. They had discovered that those bodies, when they were broken open and pressed against the bodies of others, did not refuse the joining. They had discovered that the women's flesh would in time, and in the right wet vessel, learn to be other flesh. The Hornsent thought about this for a long time, and they decided what to do. They built jars. I went, once, to the place where the jars were kept. The jars sat in long rows in a courtyard whose stones had been polished for the purpose. There were faces in the sides of some of them, half-formed, looking at nothing. There were sounds inside others, which I will not describe to you tonight, because I came to tell you about Messmer and not about what made him. What made him is also worth telling, on another night, in a longer hour than this one. Tonight, I am telling you only what I must, to make him stand right in your mind. His mother got out. She was the last of the silver-haired women, or the last who had not yet been put into a jar, and she got out because the Hornsent made one mistake, and the mistake was her. They had not known she could leave. They had not known she could rise. By the time the rising was finished, by the time the gold had settled into her hair, and the long centuries had agreed to take her, the village was empty. There was no one left in it for the new god to bless. She planted a small tree in the middle of it. The bark of the tree was the silver her own hair had been, before the gold, and its leaves were small and folded, the way the hands of the silver-haired women had folded around small things. She cut her braid and laid it at the roots, and the roots took the braid the way a mouth takes water. The woman who had raised her was already in the tree, and the woman's name I do not know. And the tree, when I touched it, knew the name. And then she had a son. The son was not blessed. The son was cursed, from the inside, by something the world had not yet learned to name, and would not learn for many centuries. There was a serpent in him, and it had been in him from before his birth, and it ate at the light he had been given. and it would have eaten all of it, but his mother knew this, and she did not let it. She sealed one of his eyes. The seal of grace held, and the serpent stayed inside him, and the light stayed inside too. Then he grew, and he was beautiful in his own way, with the red in his hair and the flame in his hands. The flame had come from the serpent. He did not know that yet. His mother trained him. She trained him as a knight and as a son, and as a being made for one purpose, a purpose not yet spoken. He was patient. He waited to be told. He loved her, and the loving was not yet a wound. On the day she told him in a small room I had been in once before, when it was used for another conversation. She had her hand on his cheek. She did not name the people he was to kill. She named the country, and she named what they had done to her, and what he must do now. I have seen mothers send their sons to conquer, but I have never seen a mother turn her son into a scalpel and order him to butcher his way through a country. He did not refuse. I do not think it occurred to him to refuse. He kissed her hand, he stood up, and he walked out of the room to find his armor. His armor was already waiting. She had had it made before the conversation. He must have known this. He did not say anything about it. When he rode out at the head of a host. I had not seen a host that large before, and I have not seen one since. The new order had been gathering it for years, in places no horned eye could find. The host was patient and cruel and ready, in the way only an order with a long memory can be. Messmer rode at its head. His one good eye was the color of the flame his mother had given him. The seal over the other eye wept a thin, clear tear that the flame vaporized before it could fall. The flame in his hands did not move when the horse moved, and the black horse beneath him was the only thing in the procession that did not know where it was going. I stood on the ridge above the road they took out of the city. The city was quiet. The host went by below me for an hour, perhaps 2, and I counted the banners, and there were more banners than there had been people in his mother's village. The first place that burned was a tower at the edge of the country, where a small body of horned priests had thought themselves safe. They were not safe. Messmer's host arrived in the night. The flame did not need to be set. The flame came out of him in the way wind comes from the sea before a storm, and the tower did not have time to know what it was watching. That was the first night, out of many more. There were great horned creatures that the Hornsent had raised as gods. The largest of them stood taller than the tower it had been chained beneath. Its horns were the moons their country had lost, brought down and bolted to a skull the priests had grown around them. It was singing when the host arrived. Messmer severed that song mid-breath. No warning, no duel, just a single spike of crimson iron driven straight through the god's throat, pinning its divinity to the stone before it could even realize its world was burning. The note stopped, but the echo of the strike vibrated in the earth for days. He killed them all. He slaughtered them down to the very concept of their bloodlines. He didn't rest. He didn't eat. He became a living furnace that consumed everything it touched. The flame didn't need fuel because Messmer was burning away his own humanity to keep it alive. The serpent was the teeth. The mother was the law, and the law demanded total annihilation. Every defense the Hornsent possessed crumbled like wet sand. Their jars, shattered. Their towers, leveled. Their terrifying traditions, utterly worthless. Because the only material that mattered in this war wasn't stone or sorcery. It was the ancestral bloodline they had tried to butcher out of existence. It had survived, it had adapted, and it had finally returned home in the hands of the Impaler. When it was over, when the last of them had been hunted into the last of their towers, and the last tower had come down, Messmer stood on a hill above what had been a city and watched it burn. I was on the next hill. I could see him. He stood motionless for hours, a silhouette against the dying embers, before his knees finally gave out. He slid from his horse, unclasped his heavy helm, and dropped it into the dirt. He didn't look like a conqueror. He looked like a child. He was waiting for her to come. She did not come. She did not come the next day, nor the day after. He waited. The army that had followed him into hell began to drift away. They packed their tents, turned their horses north, and left him there. He didn't try to stop them. He didn't say a word. He had no more commands to give. After a time, after I do not know how long, a messenger came. The messenger was a thin man with grace in his hands and the wrong news on his face. He told Messmer that the country he had cleansed was to be sealed. He told Messmer that the world above, the world his mother had built, would not be told what had been done in this country. He told Messmer that his mother thanked him. He did not tell Messmer that his mother was coming for him. He did not tell Messmer this because his mother was not coming for him. Messmer understood. He did not say he understood. I was on the next hill again, and I could see his face. His one eye closed, and the eye opened, and the eye was different on opening. And then his face did not change again for a long while. The country sealed itself around him. The seal was the seal he had worn over his eye, made into a wall around a sky. The grace that had held his serpent inside him now held the country shut. He sat inside the seal, and the serpent in him woke up. It was waiting too. I sat with him after. Not at first. At first his grief was too dangerous, and I stayed on my hill. But when the fire finally died down, I walked down. He didn't look up. He didn't acknowledge me. He just stared into the gray coals, his hands trembling in his lap. When he finally spoke, he didn't speak to me. He spoke past me, into the empty air, the way a man talks when he realizes he has been entirely abandoned. He said a name. He said it twice, pulling it out from beneath his tongue like an old splinter he had carried for 1,000 years. He said, "Mother." He said, "Marika." I am not going to tell you the third thing he said. The third thing he spoke wasn't a name. It was a curse. And though I will not repeat his words, I can tell you the three things they were forged from. The flame she had planted in his skin, the serpent she had locked inside his ribs, and the love she had weaponized on an afternoon long ago in a quiet room with her hand pressing against his cheek, back when he was still her boy and she still had a use for him. He didn't scream it. He spoke the curse softly. The curse did not need to be loud to find her. The curse knew where she was. Then, he stopped speaking. I sat with him a while longer. The fire went down. The country did not come back. I do not know what came of his body, but by the time it stopped being a body, I had begun the long walk out. I walked through what was left of his cleansing, through what was left of his mother's vengeance, through the country no one was ever to be told about. And I told myself the whole walk what I would tell you tonight, if I ever found a fire to sit at and someone willing to listen. This was the war his mother erased. Some worlds forget themselves. I go to them before they do. This is what I saw while they still remembered.